Welcome to the Homeschool High School podcast, brought to you by Seven Sisters Homeschool.com and the Ultimate Homeschool Podcast Network. I'm Vicki, and I am here all on my own today to talk about a story about our just average teens. So I'm going to tell you a story to get started, but I want you to know this is about the joy of our teens being exactly who they're supposed to be, exactly the teens that God created them to be. And in fact, us moms are the children of God that God created us to be. So let's start with the story. So I am from Florida, and I married a backwoods Florida farming family. You get the whole family when you get married in that kind of a culture. So anyway, my mother-in-law was from a farming family that had been on the land for a long, long, long time. So when she was growing up, her father's land was 100 or more acres. It was, not a huge farm. It was just a typical farm of that era, but it was a good size thing to take care of. And good thing he had lots of kids to help him. In that farmland, there were places that had really rich soil and really sandy soil, and some that were kind of a little damp down near the creek, as they would call the stream. And so there were different kinds of soil that the farmer had to know which crops would grow best in which soils. And a wise farmer paid attention and then tended his crops and planted those crops in that way. So up near the farmhouse, there may have been some, beautiful corn growing, and you could watch it grow and get bigger and bigger from the steps of the farmhouse. And then further out towards the back 40, way back in the back acres of the land, there may have been things like mustard greens or okra or potatoes, things that would grow in the soil that were in the back 40 better than the ones closer to the house. Where I'm going with this is just because the ones you could see better were more visible, it didn't mean they weren't the most important crops. So, on Sunday afternoons after church, everybody would come home and they'd eat Sunday dinner. And a lot of times on Sunday afternoons, the neighbors would come visiting because in those days there were no televisions, there was no radio. And so, what you do on Sunday afternoon is you sit on the porch and you visit, and you just chit chat about one thing or the other, and everyone talks about how their crops are doing. And you could sit on the front porch and see that corn growing, and you could not see what was growing on the back 40. But the corn growing up near the house wasn't more valuable than the crops you couldn't see. All right, so can you catch the metaphor that's coming? We have some teens in our families or in our community that were born to be more visible, and they look like the ones that are the best at something, or they're outstanding at something, or they're award winning at something. And then we have teens that are a lot like a lot of our teens, where they are average at something. In fact, the truth of the matter is, most of our teens are average at most things. So I don't know whether you guys ever had to take a statistics class, but when I was in college, the bane of my existence were the statistics courses that I had to take, but I had to take them and I survived them with lots of help. One thing I understood really well, it just made sense to me, was the bell-shaped curve of populations. So if you get a population big enough of almost anything, humans or cats or trees, like you get a big enough population of almost anything, and you plot the way that population is behaving, you will end up with a graph, a chart that looks like a bell. And the largest numbers of that population, whatever you're observing about that population, are under the top of the bell. That means the most of the population is there. So 83% of the population is under the biggest part of the bell. That means average. So the average people are under that bell. And towards the edges where there's just a few people, all right, that's the edges of the bell. Those are the outliers. They're not your average person. They're few of them. So very few people are on the outliers. And on one side of the population are the outstanding kids, and the other side would be the ones that are struggling more. That doesn't make them less valuable, it makes them where they are. But what we need to know and feel rest in is that our average kids who are not the big award winners, they are not going to be a CEO of a corporation. They are not going to go and get a full ride scholarship to a big name college. Like that's not who our teens are. They are average teens who are going to live what looks like an average life. Here's the point. God makes each of our teens, and most of them are going to be this way, exactly who they should be, an average person doing normal things in life. And as long as they learn to fulfill who God made them to be faithful to what God called them to do. So if God called them to learn to be a family person and have a family and invest in that family and pay the bills by being a plumber or being a school teacher, or by going to college and getting a job in some business area, but they do not make the big bucks. That's not a wrong thing. It's the right thing. It is the right thing, and a thing that glorifies God, to be an average person just making life good and glorifying God in their faithfulness to what God has called them to do. Does this make sense? Our teens who are average teens, who may not love math and may not love their literature classes, but they are doing them and they are learning them. They do not need to do honors level work. They need to do what they need to do because everybody needs an education, but they are not failing because they are not driving towards some big, powerful goal. They need to do faithfully who God made them to be. So if you have a just average teen, if you can help them to understand what the important thing in life is to understand themselves, who God made them to be, and to fulfill that with joy and faithfulness, then they can look for the goodness of God and joy and fulfillment where they are. Some of these kids may feel pressure to go off to some college that is not where they need to be, and they can go and scrape through and get some kind of degree and never feel happy. But if God has called them to not do that, but to do something like build houses, um, they will feel more joy in doing that. If the big calling is to get a simple job and have a simple family and be involved in their church community, that's the right thing for them. And they glorify God. So they prepare for that during high school by doing the academics they need for graduation because it makes them a more ready to be an adult person. But you also make sure they're concentrating on life skill, on character development, explore with them faith development, have experiences in life, apprenticeships and field trips, so that they are going into the last years of their high school with some enrichment in their life, like they have had experiences and are understanding themselves so that they feel comfortable and not criticizing themselves for being different than somebody that's going off to some bigwig college. I hope that makes sense. I've worked with teens so long as the advisor for the high schoolers, and then in my job as a licensed professional counselor. And I often will hear teens criticize themselves because they're not good at anything, but yes, they are. Yes, they are. They are good at what God made them to be good at. And if we can help teens to relax and explore, have experiences, and just be faithful to the little things they know, whether that's making their bed, okay, I'm faithful to that, or I'm learning how to, like write this code on the computer, like whatever is they are experiencing, that's building who they will grow up to be. And they want to do that in a way that is not criticizing themselves, but recognizing that God made them to be who they're to be, and that is the right thing. It is not ever less than, it's who they are supposed to be. So our job is not to be famous, it's to be faithful. And as homeschool moms, we need to remember that as well. Our success is not, bragging about a kid who got a full ride scholarship to college, and that's what made us a successful mom. What makes us a successful mom is doing what God gave us to do on the hard days and on the glorious days. Our job is to help our teens fulfill self-awareness and character development and academic preparation that's right for them, so that when they graduate, we've done what we can do. And so we are just people. That's all we are. And it's our job to fulfill who God made us to be, and our teens to fulfill who God made them to be. So let's be faithful. If God makes some of these teens famous, all right. But 83% of them will fulfill God's plan by being the back 40 kind of kids, the fields that don't get famous. They are the ones that are doing the work of the gospel on a day-to-day basis, and that matters. And you matter. So let's all remember, we're in this together, and we're in this to glorify God in simple ways and faithful ways. Hey, listen, if you want some encouragement, please join the Seven Sisters Homeschool Facebook group. We're on the other socials too, so Instagram and Pinterest. But we got this lovely group where you can put questions out and get other encouraging answers and experiences from other moms who are in the trenches homeschooling their high schoolers and youngers. Also, check out Seven Sisters Homeschool, the website. Some people haven't been there yet. And we've got lots of curriculum that is levelable to different kinds of needs and interests. So check that out as well. And please, everyone, would you please, before you sign off today, go to your server for your podcast and leave us some stars. And if you've got time, write a few words of review, so that we are more visible to new homeschoolers who need a little encouragement, like, you can do this, because you know what? You can do this. All right. We are all in this together, and we are glad that you are here with us. So this has been the Homeschool High School Podcast from Seven Sisters Homeschool.com and the Ultimate Homeschool Podcast Network. Thank you to Seth Tillman for editing, and we will see everyone next week.